Hello and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. I'd like to welcome everyone down to our program this evening. This evening, we are going to be talking about trade unionism. Our guests tonight are Vanessa Kissoon, who is running for the office of president of the Guyana Teachers Union, and Coretta MacDonald, who is running for our old job or current job as General Secretary of the GTU. So I want to welcome everybody to our program. As you know, on this program, we try to bring information and to infuse knowledge, to engage in discussion. The aim, of course, is to mobilize our people as part of resistance against what's happening in Guyana. So we are going to be talking to the two ladies who are vying for those two top positions. As you know, teachers are part of the public service. Those teachers have been up against it. And this goes way back into the 1970s. I remember as a young man getting into politics, the teachers have always had to fight with governments for better wages, as has been the case with public servants generally. When you look at the salaries of teachers, for example, and you compare that with other categories of workers in Guyana, the teachers' salaries lag way behind. When you look at what teachers have to do, they're the nurturers of our nation. They're the ones who have to raise our kids practically, because teaching has always been not just about teaching our young people how to read and write and the rudimentaries, but it's also teaching them how to be good human beings. I remember my first, as we call it in those days, little ABC teachers, big ABC teacher, holding my hand and teaching me how to write, teaching me how to read. One of them, teacher Emmy Yaw, passed away last year, and I'm glad I was able to tell her thanks before she did. In fact, her sister, Waveney, just died, and I think he's being buried tomorrow in Buxton. Waveney was a member of the 1st of August movement, which I belong to. Want to extend condolences to the wider family and to rest in peace. Waveney, she's one of those ladies in the organization. You know, we celebrate emancipation. It's a big activity. She was never very talkative in meetings, but knew her role. She would help with the cooking and organizing, and on the day, she'll be there to help with the sharing of food. And often we see the leaders, but we don't often see those who work. You see us, we're the ones who are on TV and radio or in the newspapers, but often there are those who support us behind the scenes. So as we bid farewell tomorrow to Waveney Yah, one of the quiet workers, I know she was active in the PNC in the village also. And what good? Death is always these days around us. As soon as you turn, somebody is leaving us. The Congo people in Annandale would say, Congo Creole, Agowe, one by one, one by one. But such is life. But as I was saying, our teachers are the ones who nurture our communities, our societies. I was making reference to my early teachers with Emmy and Paulette Wilson, Little ABC and Big ABC, holding my hand and teaching me how to write and never speaking harshly to us. And as one moves through the school system, you encounter teachers, and those teachers are there. You move up the ladder, and each of them brought something to your life. As I look back now, I can see how each of my teachers contributed something to what I have become. And so teachers are really the nurturers of our society, and more, our teachers have become females. So they've become not just teachers, but mothers, big sisters, doing for us what our parents sometimes could not do. In these days, sometimes some of us are able to help our children with homework and all that stuff, but sometimes our parents are not in a position. They themselves did not go very far in school, as we would say, or even when they would have gone far in school, because they have to work. A lot of women working as guards at night, watchmen. We don't call them watchwomen, we still call them watchmen. They have to work night shift or evening shift, 3 to 11 and 11 to 7 in the morning, having to leave their children at home. And so they're not there to help their children with homework. So the teachers have to be the ones who would help to nurture our children. And our society, our country, has not always treated our teachers with dignity. And the teachers union, as I said, over the years, have had to battle with governments, all governments, for better living conditions, better wages. Only last year we saw our teachers out on the streets drawing attention to the mismanagement of the COVID pandemic and how they were threatened by the government. Threatened by the government. And so the union becomes very important because the union is the organization that has to represent the interests of teachers. There was an exchange between Takumo Ogunse of the WPA and Lincoln Lewis of the Guyana Trade Union Congress. And Takumo raised the issue of whether our trade unions have been militant enough, asking the question, why, given the recent budget and its failure to deal with the question of wages and salaries for public servants, why have the unions, why were the unions not on the front line of pushing back against that? Takumo Ogunse is asking those questions. The union makes us strong. The union makes us strong. Rally around the union. All those are slogans that we grew up with. We ask the question why our opposition parties are not more militant. And I suppose we have to ask this question, what has gone wrong with trade unions? You know, before we had the political party in Guyana and English-speaking Caribbean, we had the unions. 1919, the Guyana Labor Union was formed in Guyana, our first trade union, and the first trade union in the English-speaking Caribbean. And in the 1930s, when the people in the Caribbean, from Jamaica in the north right down to Guyana in the south, in every Anglophone Caribbean country rose up and said enough was enough, and forced the British to send a commission to the Caribbean to find out what was happening. And it was out of that commission that came limited self-government, where our people, though still colonized, were able to, for example, vote, universal adult suffrage, so we could get our first self-government, being Guyana, at our first election in 1953, at our first government. But it was the trade unions in the 1930s, what became known as the 1930s riots. It was the last big demonstration on the part of our people to push us to independence. In those days, the trade unions had political arms, and it was those political arms that became the political parties. But the trade unions preceded political parties. And they were the ones, in a sense, who led us in the final stages of the decolonization movement. Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow in Guyana, Uriah Butler in Trinidad, V.C. Bird in Antigua, Eric Gary in Grenada. They were trade unionists before they became political leaders. So the trade union is important, and the question we are asking, what has gone wrong with the trade unions? Why have their voices? In some cases, the trade unions became attached to the political parties. And so whenever the political party is in power, the trade union that is attached to the party does not represent the workers' interests. GAU is a PPP union. GAU will make a lot of noise, strike, and so on. When the PPP is out of power, the PPP comes to power, GAU goes silent. The same can be said for unions that are close to the PNC. So one of the problems we've had is the entanglement of the unions with party politics. And so the workers' interests are not properly looked after. So as Vanessa Kissoon vies for the position of president of the Teachers Union, the question is, will she be able to move the union, the Teachers Union, to become more aggressive in looking after the interests of teachers? Teachers need a lot. Often teachers have to go in their own pockets, to buy teaching materials. I've got so many complaints from teachers. Will Vanessa Kissoon be able to turn that around? That is what she's saying she intends to do. Coretta McDonald, we know her. She is the General Secretary of the Teachers Union, and she has been standing up to the powers that be. They have singled her out as a troublemaker. She, in the recent past, has been the face of militancy, not only for teachers, but for public servants in general. Will these women, will a teachers union led by women be able to turn things around? Guyana, of course, is now an oil producing country. We have more money at our disposal, our government, I mean. And we don't have the excuse anymore. So the two ladies are going to be here shortly. I noticed the president has said that given the recent rise in prices as a result of what's happening in Ukraine I understand that business people are beginning to hoard foodstuff, which of course is going to lead to shortages. Shortages will lead to further rise in prices, rise in the price of gasoline, rise in the price of flour, other items, because they're going to be spin-offs. If you're paying more for flour, you'll have to pay more for bread. You'll have to pay more for pastries, and so on and so forth. The government has set aside $5 billion in the budget for emergency. The president has said he will do consultation as to how to deal with this rise in prices. What would they do? Recommendations have been coming from opposition parties. The president and his party, they seem inclined to go the way that they've gone in the past and to give these handouts, what they're calling cash grants. Others are saying that they need to do more than that. They need to do more than that. When the PPP say consult, we wonder who they will be consulting with. In Guyana, if you don't consult with the opposition, then you're really not consulting. The opposition represents almost half of the population, if not more than half of the population. And there can be no meaningful consultation without consultation with the opposition. So we'll wait to see. We'll wait to see what those consultations would be like. We know that this government is heavily supportive of the business sector, and their policies have been geared towards the business sector. We know that. Will they just consult with the business sector? We will have to wait and see. Will they consult with the trade unions? We will have to wait and see. So we are dealing with the crisis. Pandemic is not over. The government is saying that it will reopen the country. Last night I had the three members of the three opposition political parties on, the PNC, the AFC, and the WP. All of them said that they think that the government is moving too quickly. We are hearing that there is a new rise of the pandemic in Europe, even in China, which have done the most excellent job at containing the pandemic. In the United States, they're asking today whether there's going to be a new wave. So in the context of what's going on globally, one is curious what is driving the government to reopen. Again, we know this government is beholden to the business people, their business people, that even when the country was supposedly closed, certain businesses weren't closed. And it is not out of order to speculate that the government may be pandering to its private sector as it moves to open the country. The government did not consult with the opposition. It didn't consult with the unions in making a big decision. But that is the way of this government. It does not consult. And I was making the point a few mornings ago on the Buxtonian Morning Time. And the point I was making is that we have a political system that permits the government to behave in that way. It's called winner-take-all system, where you win an election, you take all the power, and you make decisions for the rest of the country. That's the system we have. And unless we as Guyanese face that fact, we'll be spinning top in mud. We'll be spinning top in mud. Because we somehow or the other think that when the government behaves in the way the PPP government is behaving, that they're breaking some law. Well, the law they're breaking is not constitutional law. The Constitution allows them to govern themselves and make decisions for all of us. The law that they're breaking is the moral law, which should say to you that even if the system gives you the power, the authority to make decisions by yourself, morally, you should say that is wrong. So even if something is permitted by the Constitution, you should be able to morally say, I can't do it. I shouldn't do it. I think somebody is saying they did not win any elections. Brother, they're in government. We can scream for all we want. Whether they were installed or not, they are in government. And in 2 years, we have not been able to turn it around. We have not been able to get the election petition ordered. That is because we don't have the power to do it. The only power we have, if we go in front of the courts and take 20,000 people there to demand that the court hear the petition very quickly, that is the only power we have. We're fooling ourselves if we think we have some other power. Yes, we know that they were installed. The Americans say that. The Americans helped to install them. We know that. But we can do nothing about it. That's the point I am making. We can scream every day, they didn't win the election, they didn't win the election. They're in government and they're acting like they win the election. So you might as well say, They won a disputed election. And that is what we have to grapple with. We have a government that resulted from a disputed election, but it is governing with total power. Total power. And we have little power to turn back what they're doing. We don't have any institutional power. We go to Parliament, you know, we can lick down the Parliament, throw away the mace. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They'll pass the bill anyway, because the Constitution allows them to do it. The Constitution allows them to do it. There's no check on government power in the Constitution, within the system. There are no checks and balances. In America, for example, the president nominates a Supreme Court nominee, a judge, nominates, but Congress conforms. And if at the end of the day, they don't like what's being done in Congress, the president doesn't like it, if he can get 2/3 of the Congress, he can veto what you call checks and balances. In Guyana, the president nominates and then he consults in order to get a judge onto the bench. We don't have any checks and balances within the system. Any checks you have, it's outside of the system. Outside of the system. That is why when we have had changes in Guyana, it has come from outside the system. The system does not allow for checks and balances. When we talk about constitutional change, we call it constitutional reform. What we need is constitutional change to put checks and balances in the system. No government with 51% of the seats in parliament should allow to pass a budget on its own. You should have a 60% threshold, which will then force the government to seek support from the opposition to get a budget passed. No one party should be able to pass a budget, but they do in Guyana, and we in the opposition and do nothing about it inside the system. $5 billion is set aside for emergency. We have emergency situation before us. The government will decide on its own how that emergency money will be spent. It will decide on its own how much will go to rice farmers, how much will go to public servants, and we can do nothing about it in the system. It's hard to admit these things. It's hard, but it's true. When Art in Barbados said, it's hell being in the opposition in the Caribbean. It's hell. The system does not allow the opposition any power. When we are saying change the system to a power sharing system, what we are in fact saying is change the system so that the opposition gets some power in the system. And some of your own supporters saying it can't work. We're not opening our minds to understand what we are saying. We hear a word, power sharing the Doon song. It's all like I got to share it. I got to share it with Yo. And Jack Joe is a bad man. I can't share nothing with him. What power sharing means. Power sharing is saying when you're in the opposition, you have no power to stop nothing. And what we are saying, change the constitution so that the opposition has power. That's what we're saying. So we have to go through a kind of mental change in how we see power. Ultimately, government is about power. Government has the power to make us do what we do not want to do. We don't want to stop at the crossroads and the government puts a traffic light there and forces us to stop. Power. The government has the power to make us do something that we would not normally want to do. That's called power. And in a country like Guyana, one party with 51% of the vote has the power, the sole power, to decide whether to put a traffic light there or not. Opposition has no say. They can bawl and say, that is not the right place to put a traffic light. So we have to start to think about power. Power. Power don't mean just seats. It means the ability to get things done or to stop bad things from happening. The power to make good things happen and the power to stop bad things from happening. We have played around with power for too long. We've played around with it. People are worrying about Jack Dio and worrying about them. And you have to worry because they have all the power. The opposition went to see GECOM yesterday. And they told GECOM that GECOM should not hold an election without certain changes. Can the opposition make it happen? Not in the system, because the president tomorrow can call an election with the same dirty rules. He's empowered to do that in the system. While we're talking to GECOM and telling GECOM you can't hold an election, if the president of Guyana says to GECOM, tomorrow you have an election in 2 months, GECOM got to do it. You all understand power? Power? The president and his government, they have the power. They have the power to call an election with a bad list or a good list. The opposition will have two choices if the PPP call a snap election. We either go in and take part in an election with a bad voters list, or we boycott the election, or we stop the election from happening. The system, there's nothing we can do in the system. If President Ali calls an election tomorrow, GCOM has to prepare for that election with that bad list. There's nothing we can do in the system. We do not have any power in the system. The power we have is outside of the system. We can decide we're not participating in the election. In that way, the PPP will go through with the elections and they will win all the seats in parliament, all 65. We will have 0. So our leaders may say that is not a way to go. So our leaders will be forced to participate in an election with a flawed list and flawed rules and lose again. Or the opposition can put thousands of people on the streets and force the government to back off from holding an election with a bad list. Your power is informal power outside the system. Our leaders may decide, no, we can't do that, so we have to go in the system and contest the election, knowing that the list is bad and so on. We can't do anything about it in the system. So my sisters and brothers, when we talk about power sharing, we are talking about getting the opposition into government with the power to stop bad things from happening. In a power sharing government, the president will have to consult with the leader of the opposition in naming an election date. The PNC and the coalition would be able to stop an election in the system, legally in the system, with a bad voters list. The people got the power to shut down, but your leaders got decided if they're going to shut down. And often our leaders, we may be thinking one way, that you can go on the street and shut down. And our leaders will say, well, if you're going to shut down, this will happen, that will happen, so we're not going to shut down. The people don't act on their own. They act based on what their leaders tell them to do. So even the street power has to be by, the leaders have to sign off on it. Imagine opposition supporters going on the streets without the support of their leaders. Let me tell you when last that happened and how it ended up. It happened in Linden in 2012. The Linden people staged that protest without the support of their opposition parties. I know plenty of y'all know that. That the opposition, APNU, had agreed with the government to stop the subsidy to the Linden people. I know you all don't know that. And the people in Linden, on their own, went out there and waged that struggle led by Vanessa Kissoon and Sharma Solomon. They didn't have the support of their party. They didn't. It's people like Mark Benshop and the AFC people, Nigel Hughes, I myself. It's people like us who went up to Linden and gave those people support. The party did not give them support. Left them to the wolves. And what happened? The police stormed and killed 3 of them and injured others. because their party did not agree with what they were doing, the party didn't support them. I know you all don't know that. So you can go on the streets and you can push the struggle as far as you can push it. But if your party is not behind you, you are left to the devices of the government. I remember that day on the bridge when they shot those people. The head of the police on the ground, they came to Aubrey Norton and myself and asked us to go on the bridge and tell people to come off the bridge. And we tell them we didn't organize the protest, the people organized the protest. And we are not going to go there and tell the people to come off the bridge. That is the first inkling that we got that they were planning something that day. The leaders of the coalition weren't there on that day. You see, you hear who the people came to. Aubrey Norton was there. He was not in the leadership of the coalition at that time. He was there as a Lindoner, as an individual. I was there as an individual. The police look around, we were the only two leaders they saw there outside of the Linden leaders. They came to us. There was no coalition leader, no APNU leader there for them to go to, not Mr. Granger, not the rest. The people were there on their own and the police shot them down. So yes, brother, who's saying the people got the power. The people got the power. But the leaders are the ones who have to give the okay. You can risk going out there, and those people in Linden were very brave. They took that struggle for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks without their leaders. You have to take your hats off to them. But when the government decided to act, the government acted, and the APNU wasn't there. The leaders on that day, there were, I think Lincoln Lewis was there too. Yes, Lincoln was there. Aubrey was there. I was there. I can't remember if Mark Benchop was there. I think he wasn't there. We were the people. The APNU wasn't there to defend their own people. So it's okay to say that the people can shut down, but you got to get your leaders behind you. I am guaranteeing you that if Mr. Granger was there that day, if Mr. Harmon was there that day, if, you know, Valder Lawrence, the police would not have shot these people. So power is important. If Mr. Harmon was the Home Affairs Minister in a power sharing government on that day, he would not have sent the police to shoot those people. And you all say you all don't want power sharing? You all don't want power. Forget about the sharing. When you say power sharing, you all saying you all don't want power. When you don't have power, you are left to the devices of the government. The government has the power to tell the police shoot or not shoot. The commissioner of police is not going to shoot without the Home Affairs Minister telling him to shoot. Power is important. And our supporters, you all have to get used to this business of power. The ability to get people to do things that they would not normally do. The ability to distribute common resources. They got nothing to do with party leaders to protest. You're talking wrong at times. I am saying people can go and protest. I don't think people sometimes listen. People want to protest, they can go out and protest. I'm not saying that. You want to go and protest, go. I'm saying when the government decides they've had enough and they're going to put down the protest, they will do it. If your party is out there with you, the government is less likely to do it. The government is less likely to shoot into a crowd of protesters as they did in Linden. If the major leaders were out there with them. I think sometimes we have a listening problem. People can protest. People have a right to protest. With or without your party. All I'm saying is if your party is out there with you, the government which has the power to shoot or not to shoot is less likely to shoot if your leader is out there. You can protest. You can go on the road tomorrow and hold the picket sign in front of a ministry. Nobody's going to do you anything. They laugh at you. But if you bring 1,000 people with you, they will stop laughing at you and believe you're serious. And then the police will come and say, disperse. And you can choose to disperse or stay. Now we will see who has power. People's power versus the power of government. And the only way you're going to win the government is you got to get plenty people on the streets. That's what Desmond Hoy did in 1997-98. Every day he would put 10,000 people on the street, and he was there with them. Aubrey Norton was there with them. All the PNC leaders used to be out there. So the government couldn't shoot, didn't shoot. And we were able to bring the PPP to the table. They gave up 2 years from their term. They agreed to constitutional reform. Because of street protest in which the leaders were in front there. So when we're talking about street protest, you tell me about street protest, I cut my teeth on that. I cut my teeth on street protest. In the days when we were protesting, you got in front of Guyana stores. And we all what is called whistle stop meeting. By the time the police here, we jump in with vehicle and we move from Guyana stores and we go on to Border Market. And by the time they're here, we at Border Market, we move from there and we go on to Big Market. Don't tell people like me about protests, street protests. I know that. But we always knew that there was a limit to it. That's why you have to move like a gorilla. That time when the Linden Protest Georgetown should have joined, they couldn't shoot everybody. I tell you, George, don't join me, brother. We had a big rally in Buxton. So there were communities that joined. But you know, you can give support, but the action is ground zero. That struggle went as far as it got because they got support from outside of Linden. But there's a limit. Street protests. In the days when we were doing street protests, we would know because we had our informants in the police force, so they would tell me, all right, they're lining up the policemen at Cove and John. And there's so many policemen. We would know that if we go in with a small protest, we won't get through. So protest is not just simply picking up and saying going on the street. You have to have intelligence. You have to know where they're sending the police. Are they amassing police at Penzance? Then you move your protest to Anse Grove. Protest is not a thing. Protest will not bring money into the country, as somebody's saying. So we have to take all of this thing into consideration. Power is what is important. Once you have the power, then it reduces the need for doing street protests because you have power. It reduces the need to put your people at risk because you have power. Nobody wants to go at risk to be shut down. But you have to do that because you don't have power in the system. So rather than be talking about protest, why not talk about power? You protest when you don't have power. The more power you have, the less you have to protest. I think Ms. Kissoon and Ms. Kitsoon and Ms. McDonald are here. We'll have them on in a couple of minutes. I understand that they were delayed by traffic on the road. A little bit unfortunate, but it gave us an opportunity to have a discussion about power. Nothing is wrong with protests. You have to protest outside of the system when you don't have power in the system. But wouldn't you rather have power than having to go out there and risk your life protesting? And the obvious answer is yes. So let us talk about power. It must be talk about protest. We don't talk about power enough in the opposition. We have to talk about power. These ladies are seeking to win the top leadership of the union. And if they do that, if they win the presidency and the general secretary, they have power. They have power. They have the power to decide to call a strike. They have the power to negotiate with the government. Power. Political power. We're not starting to talk about economic power yet. That's another story. We're in a bad situation where we don't have political power, we don't have economic power. because there's a relationship between politics and economics. The government has the power, the political power. It uses that political power to steer resources to its supporters. Power. And in steering resources to them, it is empowering them. If you don't have political power, you don't have the power to empower your people economically. With political power, you get the power to distribute wealth. Power. That's what I want us to talk about. Not just to talk about getting on the streets and all that stuff. Yeah, that's important. That's important. But there is an even more potent power, and that is the power of inside of the institution. People's power, no dictator. And those were our battle cry back then. But in those days, we used to be able to put thousands of people on the street. In those days, we had our sources in the police force who would give us information on what they're planning, and we would know how to plan our protests. Protest is not a stupid thing, you know. All right, Vanessa and Mr. Operator, people are anxiously waiting for the ladies. So we want to talk about power. We want to talk about power. We want to apologize for the late appearance of our guest. I want to apologize to you. I only learned of the delay as I was coming on air, so I could do nothing about it. Is anybody ready? I see Vanessa here. Vanessa Kassoon, welcome. We've been waiting for over an hour for you ladies. I understand, but I didn't have advance information that you all were going to be late. So let's get rolling immediately. You're running for president of the Guyana Teachers Union. Why are you running? You have to unmute.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, thank you very much, and good night to yourself and to your viewers. Sorry for the delay, but we are in campaign mode, so we were out doing some work on the ground. Now, I believe that it is time that the Guyana Teachers Union and teachers get the type of representation that they deserve. I believe that it is time that teachers be respected. And I honestly believe, Dr. Hines, that I am the person to take the Guyana Teachers Union and the teachers of this beloved country forward and into the future. Because teachers for long, you know, not they, because I am a teacher, and we've been being treated anyhow, you know, and the teachers are not being respected. And so one of my top priorities is, first of all, is to have that camaraderie and bringing back that confidence into the union, and having our teachers participate in decision making and so on of the GTU. So this is one of the reasons. And of course, in order to run for president, you had to be nominated. And I was nominated, which means teachers would have expressed the confidence in me to lead the Guyana Teachers Union.
Vanessa, let me be brutally frank here. If you are saying that you are running to head the trade union alongside political party, the trade union is the next most important institution in our country.
Yes.
And people have been saying that the trade union movement has lost its bite. It's been kicked around by governments. It is not standing up for for workers. It takes into consideration matters apart from the workers' interest. Why do you think that you, Vanessa Kissoon, can give the Guyana Teachers Union that bite that a lot of its members feel that it doesn't have?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say, Dr. Hines, I was not privy, or I hadn't the opportunity to serve at the executive level of the Guyana Teachers Union. But as you know, I would have served for 8.5 years as a member of parliament and fighting this at the same government that is in power right now. And you would remember that I, Vanessa Kissoon, any struggle, I was always on the front line. I'm always on the front line. I have been able to negotiate because, of course, as a leader, you have to be able to get involved in collective bargaining, putting policies on the table. And I know that with my leadership, because I've been proven before at the regional level where I represented approximately 50,000 residents of Region 10. And you know that in that capacity, because I know you said it before, you've seen me on the ground. And this is one of the things that I think has been missing. Leadership on the ground. You have to ensure that you are on the ground. You cannot be in leadership and be in an office. And this is one of the things as member of parliament that I've learned over the years, is that you have to be on the ground. You have to be among your comrades. And the other thing too, Dr. Hines, is consultation. Having the members, when members feel that that level of participation in being involved in the decision making of the union, and their voices are being heard, they're not just being heard and ignored, then you will have that camaraderie and you will be able to bring teachers together again. And they will be able to, not only you representing them, they will be able also to represent themselves, because one of the things too, as a leader, you have to be able to empower your people. You have to be able to negotiate on their behalf. And I would have done that, Dr. Hines, locally and internationally.
And before you came on air, I was referencing the Linden struggle of 2012. And I was telling the audience something that most of them probably did not know, that you and Mr. Chalmers Solomon were leading a big struggle without the support of your political party. A lot of them didn't know that you all were engaged in self-activity and self-leadership. You mentioned your member of parliament thing, but for me, that struggle in 2012 that you all carried out on your own, I think qualifies you to lead the reform and some would say the change that is needed in the teachers union. Coretta?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, I must say we did have some support from some members of the party, but I know what you're saying when you say the party. And one of the things that I've learned, Dr. Hines, is that speaking truth to power, it's not always easy, because you know, and when you stand up for what you believe, and this is what I know as a leader, as an individual, since I'm growing up, I stand up for what I believe. And one of the other things is that I do not like to see people taken advantage of. And my friends from way back to primary school will tell you, when I'm seeing things happening to other friends in my class, and so I used to step in because when I thought that they were being taken disadvantage of. And this is the type of leadership you want. But you find now that when you're this type of leader, people do not want to have that. Some call you too radical. But we know that this government that we're dealing with, you can't be no softy to deal with them. You have to be radical in some cases. And like you were saying earlier, you have to at times strike, you have to protest. And the other aspect is that you have to be able to go to the bargaining table and be able to negotiate. And we've been able to do all of that. We've been able to protest, we were able to negotiate, and we saw tangibles of our struggles. So yes, I believe that I am the person to lead the Ghana Teachers Union.
Coretta McDonald.
Hello.
You've been, and this is my view, and I'm entitled to my view. I'm entitled to talk a lot. I've earned it. I've earned it. You have been the lone voice as far as I'm concerned. You may be charitable to your colleagues on your executive, but as someone from the outside looking, you have been the lone voice that has been given the type of leadership that a union needs at this time. For that, you have earned the wrath of those in power. But you have used the institutional power. I listen to you well. You always would say this is not about Coretta McDonald.
Exactly.
This is about the General Secretary of the Teachers Union. In that position, it's a position of power. And it's the power of the worker standing up to the power of the state and government. What have you learned about your stint as General Secretary that makes you want to continue?
Dr. Hines, thank you for having me on your program. And let me say good night to my colleague and my president in waiting, and to your viewers out there. I want to thank you too for the kind words that you have said about me, which is a fact. When you talk about the GTU, everybody sees Coretta McDonald, or everybody hears Coretta McDonald when you mention the GTU. And so many times persons would say, yes, Coretta McDonald is the head of the GTU. She's the head of the GTU. But again, let me say, Coretta McDonald is a part of a team. And I like, and I've been promoting team effort, because Coretta McDonald cannot do this alone, even though you might hear this voice. I cannot do it alone. And so I've been promoting team. And that is what I will continue to do. As a matter of fact, if you notice what is happening during this whole campaigning season, I am part of a team. And so at no time I will say I will talk about the position. But the fact that you're asking me this question about what I've learned, I have learned to be even more resolute against this regime. I've learned that. I've learned too that I always have to be prepared and to be way ahead of my game when I have to challenge this particular regime. In addition to that, I have got to be able with my team to be able to put backup systems in place just in case our first mode of operation that we have there fails, we have something to step on. More than that, this regime, they have taught me that I needed to do a whole lot of reading, much more reading that I've been doing, and consulting with my counterparts outside of Guyana, choosing from them best practices, choosing from my colleagues in Haiti how to deal with a situation here. Because when you look at the manner with which governments operate, you decide whether you're going to choose Trinidad, or you're going to choose Haiti, or you're going to choose an approach made by Jamaica. So this regime has taught me that I have to always go out there and be on top of my game, quote unquote, when I have to deal with them, because they are radical, they are cruel, they don't care about ordinary people, and they just feel that they can dictate the pace. And so I always have to ensure that I keep abreast with the labor laws, all the concessions that we have signed, the conventions, as a matter of fact, that we've signed on to. I have to keep abreast with them so that when they slip up here, I can highlight to them, this is what you're doing and it's not right. And I can notify our teachers, because as General Secretary, I'm the spokesperson. So when you hear me say I, it's not because I want to say I, but as the General Secretary, who's the communications officer, it's my responsibility to update our members and to speak to them from time to time.
Coretta, we have a saying in Guyana, and I suppose in the rest of the world, behind every good man is a good woman. I want to throw this out there tonight. Behind every good woman is another good woman. How does the partnership with you and Vanessa, how do you think it will lift, I'm using your terminology, the game? And when we say game, you know what we're talking about.
Yes. Dr. Hines, no disrespect to my male colleagues, but we just came off of the heels of International Women's Day, where they spoke of gender equality. And in addition to that, the sub-theme said, breaking the barriers, breaking the bias. And it is for this fact that where before we conceptualized in our minds that it is time for women to take on leadership positions. Let me go a little further to say, as women, we stand out in the crowds when we have a protest action. We are in front. As women, we spread the tablecloths. We decorate the auditorium or whatever venue it is. We do the decorations. We prepare the meals. We serve, and we serve. But when it's time to take up leadership positions, we are always being sidelined. And even though our counterparts and even some of our women folk, while they would acknowledge that we are important and extremely important to the process, they still sometimes don't see it fitting for us to be in leadership positions. And I thought that after looking at what has been happening in the Caribbean, and even right here in Guyana, in our parliament, where the coalition would have decided to place women in leadership positions, when we look at the makeup of our parliamentary composition, what do we see there? Half and half. And so I decided a while ago, it's time for us to have a female leadership once again heading the GTU. We've given the males all the help that they needed, all the support that they needed. And I think it's time for our women folk and our men folk to be able to support a woman, lift her on their shoulders, and to take the GTU to another level. You see, the thing is, as a woman, you understand how other women feel. A man can't understand how a woman feels. And so as women, we understand how our female colleagues feel. Those who are single mothers, we understand the struggles that they have to go through in order to bring their children to the level that they want them to be at. We understand how sometimes our men folk operate because we have to deal with them too. And because of that, it gives us that balance to be able to lead, to launch into leadership, and to be able to give of our best and to bring the results that are so needed.
Vanessa, I don't have the statistics at hand, but I do know that the majority in the teaching profession, the majority is women. I know that. I don't have the statistics.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It is.
And that as teachers, they are more than just tutors on how to do math and English and so on. They are mothers.
They are mothers.
Because
exactly.
A lot of time, their sisters who are the mothers of those children are out in the fields, out on the road, trying to make a living as security guard, right? And the youth teachers become that. And so therefore, the question I'm putting to you, as a female leader, what qualitative difference you can make in terms of making representation, because that's what the union is about, making representation for teachers. How does as a female, how does that increase your scope and understanding when it comes to making representation?
Well, I think, Dr. Hines, you would have said it. First of all, as females, we are mothers. Whether you're biological or not, you're a mother. Because teachers, we are mothers to hundreds of children out there. And so we understand as women and we feel the burdens. We know what we go through as women. And so because of that, Dr. Hines, I know as a woman, I will be able to represent, and as you said earlier, majority of the teachers out there are females. And because I am in the classroom and because I've been experiencing over the years, Dr. Hines, what we've been going through, I can tell you this, we're not just mothers, we're counselors, we're doctors. There are times we have to become lawyers, we're prosecutors, we're judges, we become politicians. Listen, everything, you name it, we have to do it. And so because I have that first-hand experience, and as a woman, I know, Dr. Hines, that I will be able to make that difference and to be able to represent. Because, you know, as my sister Coretta McDonald would say, when we talk, you know, people say we talk like we rowing but it's not that we rowing and we arguing, Dr. Hines. It's a passion. And because we understand and we feel what our colleagues are going through and what they've been through and they continue to go through. So I will be able, and with my other colleagues, to represent teachers at that level. And also not only represent, but to get the tangibles and get results.
And of course, the trade union movement, like all of the movements in our country and across our region and the world, is masculinized even when they have female leadership. And so I'm sure that you sisters would feminize the trade union movement, first of all, in your own union. And I'm using feminization not in its narrow sense, but in its broad sense. I'm talking about bringing feminist values to leadership and representation, which in my interaction with you all, I am very confident that you all will be able to. Go ahead, Vanessa.
And Dr. Hines, that we need to train. We listen. And I was saying this to my sisters, we were coming. I said, you know what we don't do? For some reason, whenever we're in leadership, we're afraid to train or to have somebody understudy us. And that is one of my things, even as member of parliament. When I was out there, I had young people cheering programs, putting them out there to introduce people. You have to build their confidence. And that is why I said to some teachers today, for me, one of the things that I have been missing and that camaraderie, for some reason, I don't know why it just suddenly gone through the door with the GTU, but consultation, being on the ground and interacting, when you're able to have that one-on-one and that physical, listen, we were out there today and my sister could tell you, teachers felt really good because they saw us. We were there, we were able to answer questions, you know. In some cases, person says, well, you give me something to think about now, because they were able to have that interaction and that one-on-one, and we were able to talk with them and have them understand the importance too, you see. And what the last time with the GTU, one of the biggest issues we had was that consultation issue. Yeah. You cannot, as a leader, Dr. Hines, make decision when you would have consulted before, when you wanted an action and you got the response and you got the support. But when the action was to be ended, you didn't feel that you needed to consult. And that's a big issue. As leaders, you have to ensure, and that is one of I have learned that in politics, being on the ground and consulting with colleagues.
Coretta, come right in. You were anxious to make a point.
Yes. Dr. Hines, I wanted to say that on the aspect of what do we bring, that feminine touch, I want to say that as women, we have recognized that there is the level of respect for women has dwindled, even in the teaching profession. And I'm saying that because of this recent issue that we had just the other day, where the president of the Guyana Teachers Union, Mr. Mark Light, referred to his female colleagues as elements. You notice? Mr. Mark Light referred to his female colleagues because he is.
We've lost Coretta's song there. Okay, you're back now. Yes.
Yes, because some of his female colleagues are not in support of him and they're supporting another female colleague. He defined them or referred to them or described them as elements. You know what is most disgusting is that this guy presents himself as a pastor. And this is a pastor who is calling God's creation elements. And this there shows the kind of disrespect that is being meted out to our women in sometimes very, very subtle way and sometimes in harsh ways. And this is on Facebook. So what I'm saying here can be proven. And as females, we took offense to this. And I'm saying tonight to teachers who are listening to this program, if your president could refer to one of his colleagues as his female colleague as an element today, watch yourself, because tomorrow you might be referred to as something else. Now, if the president, who is a male figure, doesn't have that kind of respect for a woman, he came from a woman, he has a wife, he has sisters, I'm sure. If he doesn't have that kind of respect for women, then you understand where we're going. And so us here as women, we come with that passion where we are going to put into perspective, put programs in place to bring about this kind of respect that not only our males should have, but that our females must have. We must be respected. And you notice it's leaders like those who would have caused the teaching profession, who would have contributed to the teaching profession being in the state that it is in right now, where lots of people don't have respect for us, because we as teachers, we label our colleagues as elements and other names and so on that we give to them. You know, I have to say this because as a teacher, you know, sometimes when people hear me speak, they think, like Vanessa said earlier, they think you're fighting. But any trade unionist who is worth their salt, if you cannot express your passion when you speak on issues, then you're not worth being a trade unionist. You look the world over. The passion comes out because it is within. It is what you feel. It is what you have been through and what you are ready to continue to do. It's like me, Coretta McDonald. I had to stand and defend myself against education officers who felt that they could have railrolled me. But you know what? I have done lots of reading, and so I could have stand up to them. And so when you hear me speak, I am speaking because I'm testimony that advantage, let me put it in that way, can be taken on teachers if you don't know what you're about. And so with this combination, we come with that package where we are going to offer at our branch levels, at our school levels, at staff meetings or developmental sessions. We are going to offer the kind of training that would cushion or inculcate into our members the kind of moral values that they need to have to lead this profession. And so those are some of the things we want to bring on our slate. Outside of salaries and additional benefits and proper working conditions, we are going to lift this profession because we are going to bring about what we call the commons of the day. Good morning. How are you? Hello, my friend. Thank you. How are you today? What's happening here? Let's see how we can resolve this. And you know, we, like everywhere else, we have these interpersonal relationships and so on. We are going to be working on those issues. And that in itself, outside of reminding our members how they ought to be responsible when they are demanding their rights, we are going to be putting all of those into perspective. And that in itself would make our members rounded members. In addition to that, because we are going to be there, we are going to develop that sort of camaraderie. We are going to develop that art of being able to speak to each other, speak with each other, share opinions, accept opinions, tweet where we have to tweet, and put them into policies that we would want to see have operated at the Guyana Teachers Union. And so again, this is not about a one person, this is about our team and what we want to see happen at the Guyana Teachers Union for the benefit of our members. And let me go a little further, Dr. Hines, to say, you hear all the things, the waste talks, let me put it that way, about who's political and who's not political and all kinds of things you're hearing out there. Don't vote for Vanessa Kissoon. Don't vote for Coretta McDonald because they're political. But let me ask the question right now. Who is not political? Who amongst us is not political? All of us go out there and vote, except maybe for some who have their religious beliefs. But the majority of us, we go out there and vote. As a matter of fact, what is happening at the GTU right now is politics. It's political. But it's politics at a different level. And may I remind us that out of the trade unions were born politicians. Politicians were birthed out of the trade union movement. And so this whole thing about who's political and don't vote for them and don't vote for them, that is trash. The thing here is the ability to be able to canvass, let me say that, canvass, be able to negotiate, be able to persuade, be able to put forward your defense in such a manner that you would be able to convince even those sitting in the PPP that this is what we want for teachers. You see, the thing is, we don't want a whole mountain for teachers, but eventually we'll get there. But what we are doing here, we are asking for the basic things for our teachers, proper classrooms. And when we say proper classrooms, proper benches, proper desks. And with COVID now, we're not talking benches and desks. We're talking combination seats, proper combination seats. We want to have projectors in our classrooms. And this is because we're into technology and we've got to move like everyone else. And I'm saying this to say this one. We're talking about licensing of teachers and it's going to be run across the Caribbean. So if we're talking licensing of teachers, then it means our schools in Guyana, they will have to have an urgent reloading or an urgent overhauling so that we can come on par with our counterparts in the Caribbean. I'm going to leave you to ask the other.
Yeah. Vanessa, yes, let's talk some nuts and bolts here.
Well, let me just say before you go, Dr. Hines, I want to say this because there's a point that my colleague made, and I want to say it with the statement that was made. I have an issue where we have double standards, where in 1 year, in 2018, you had no issue with calling names. In 2021, as the leader, you had issues with calling names, but in 2022, you were participating in calling names. And the other thing to that, you understand, so I have a issue.
But Vanessa, you need to mention exactly what was said. You don't need to say call names because many persons out there don't know what you're talking about.
Let me make this point, right? When in 2018, Dr. Nicolette Henry was called a yard foul during protests, nothing was said. Nothing was said by the leader or the president. And then in 2021, when the teachers were on protest and they called the minister wild hog, it was an issue. But now in 2022, when you're being challenged by a female, you don't have an issue with calling females names. So I have a problem with that double standard. But what I want to say though, Dr. Hines, even in that interview, we heard that you don't need people who are loud. You know, these females, they're loud, they're airish, and you don't need them to lead. But when you want action, you call on these same people. And I want to say this also, Dr. Hines, as a leader, I understand what is being played out, and I will not be distracted because the individual will say things to get a certain response. And because they're not getting that response that they expect to get, because we're not here for that. We have a mission. We're on a mission. We have goals and objectives, like my colleague mentioned just now. Things that are no longer seen as luxuries, but things that are necessities to teachers. I remember the other day we were talking with some teachers, West Coast, and I talk about house lots. And when I was finished a teacher, I was sitting next to her, I went back next to her. She whispered to me, she said, Miss, you don't know how you make me feel when you said that. I applied since 2012. And to date, I cannot have a house lot. Graduated since when? So since a teacher would have graduated from CPC, served 3 years off your contract, you have to serve back 5 years, you should be entitled to a house lot at concessionary rates. And so these are some of the things. They're no longer luxuries, they're necessities.
I have never known of a trade unionist who was not loud. They used to say the same thing about the late Jane Philip Gay. I happen to have known her. As a little boy, I would go with my auntie to the women's auxiliary meetings because she was one of the early leaders of the women's auxiliaries, later became the RSM. And she was quite a leader, and you guys are sitting on our shoulders. Let's talk some nuts and bolts here. How's the campaign going, Vanessa?
Well, Dr. Hines, I must say that the campaign is picking up. And one of the things I really appreciate, and I want colleagues to understand, the working relationship or relation that the present General Secretary and myself have, that is what this union needs. And I know that after the elections and the team that would have been elected, because as a leader, you have to be open to work with all stakeholders. You have to be open to work with everyone. So after this, I know that we will be able to lead the GTU, and the reception that you're getting from the teachers, it's amazing. The love that you're feeling, you know, and you're hearing the whispers after the meetings. They're coming to you. They're saying to you, we like this. We like seeing you. We like how if you notice, we came late because we were on the ground. All right. We were up lower quarantine, and teachers they want to hear from their representatives. They want to see them. And so this is the type of thing that we will be promoting. I said to some of the colleagues, I said, I'm not sure what we will call it as yet, but once I'm given that opportunity to serve, and that's another thing, as leaders, we serve. We're not expected to be served. We serve. And once I'm given that opportunity, we'll have union days where the union goes to the different branches or the different regions, and teachers know your representatives are here and you can come. They can hear. We don't have to have always them calling us via phone. We even hear some things. Miss, one teacher said she's now retired. She said while she was in the system and she's been calling, up to now the phone is not answered, and she's retired. So that issue has not been able to dealt with, you know, at the level of the leader. So you can understand what teachers are going through. And though we have technology, we can have Zoom meetings, we can have WhatsApp meetings, it is always important to go on the ground. You must be able to meet and interact with your teachers. And that is one of the biggest cry. And that is why one of my main priority will be to do that, to bring the rank and file together, the members, and, you know, bring back that camaraderie, man. We were talking to them about having activities, teachers can have, invite the executive of the GTU. We have to be part of them, you know? Not like today, one school. All the other schools were allowed to observe Pagua, and the children allowed to wear, and one school was not given that opportunity because somebody at the ministry didn't give them the go-ahead. Those things we cannot continue. We should, the exec must be there to say, listen, no. Go ahead and have your activity and be able to represent them.
Corretto, as we prepare to close out, walk us through the process. We understand ballots have been mailed out to the teachers. We have some teachers on here, they're asking what's the process, what's the procedure, walk us through.
All right, so the elections officer and her team, they would have mailed all the ballots out. All are out by now. So many of our schools in the different regions, they've started receiving their ballots. Ballots are in Region 9, but not in every sub-district as yet. We have ballots in Region 8, not in all 3 of the sub-districts as yet. We have in Regions 1, I think Moruca, they have not yet started receiving their ballots. We have ballots started in Georgetown. And so I guess by Monday, we are going to have ballots in Regions 5, Region 6, Region 10, Region 7, both Bartica and Upper Mas, we are going to start having those ballots, and in Region 3. Region 2, they've started collecting, but they'll have many more coming next week and the following week. I want to say to teachers, on that ballot paper, you're going to see the various positions. So you'll have president, you have 2 names there. Look for Vanessa Kissoon, put your X right there. For first vice president, you're going to see 2 names. Look for Lesmin Collins, put your tick there. For second vice president, you're going to see 2 names. Put your tick to one of those 2 names that you're going to see. Any one of the 2 that you wish to put your tick to, put your tick there. Then you're going to see the position of general secretary. You know where you have to put that, Coretta McDonald. Then you have deputy general secretary, Jennifer Nicholson. When you would have completed that, you fold your ballot and you return that, put that ballot into your returning envelope. Don't allow anyone to come to your school to tell you that they're coming to collect your ballot. The trick is, because they're dishonest persons out there, the trick is they would want to come to pretend as if they're going to assist you to repost your ballot. But what they'll actually do is to open that ballot, and if the voting there is not what they like or what they want to see happen, they're going to spoil your ballot. And so we want all of those votes for Coretta McDonald and Vanessa Kissoon and Lesmin Collins and Jennifer Nicholson, we want them to be counted. So you put your ballot in that envelope and ensure that you have them there. I'm not sure what happened there just now.
Yes, they have.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, but go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you. We're hearing you, but
sure that you put that ballot into that envelope, and you can probably ask one teacher who is confident to post them. If not, you can do that individually. So the 8th or the 9th, your ballot is not yet at your school because they're supposed to come in a large envelope addressed to the head teacher, but every individual ballot would be in that envelope. If you don't see your ballot by the 8th, start calling the GTU's office to ask for Mr. Baptist, and that number is 226-3183. 226-3183. Call, ask for Mr. Baptist or Mr. Bino or Mr. Dioraj.
I think we may have lost Coretta there. Marielle from Linden said, I received mine today in Linden and I voted like a boss. So you go, Sister Marielle. What you got to do now, my sister, is to make sure that you Go to the other teachers and make sure that they vote like a boss, just like you. And you all know that Vanessa is from Linden, and where Linden goes, the rest of the country. Vanessa, we are about to close out. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I want to say to my colleagues as they receive their ballots, I want to say to them that in me, Dr. Hines, they will have a leader who will stand up for them, a leader who will stand up with them. In me, they'll have a leader who will work with them and a leader who will work for them. In me, they'll have a leader who will fight for them and a leader who will fight with them. And I want to say that once given the opportunity, like I said before, to serve, I will serve to the best of my ability with a team that would have been elected, because teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. I think Coretta is back with us. Coretta, closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts would be, go out there, teacher, vote like a boss for woman power. Go out there and support your sisters, because we have a package for you that would be delivered after the declaration would have been made and we would have had our first consultation with you. We are going to have packages delivered to you. So teachers, don't allow anybody to cloud your thoughts and your focus. Your focus at this time is to elect leaders who are fearless, who are courageous, who can stand with you and by you, and the leaders who cannot be bought. Let me say that. You have women leaders who are ready to take you to another level. And you know, if you remember, and if you're seeing what is happening, you understand why the attack is on Coretta MacDonald and Vanessa Kissoon, because we cannot be easily moved. We cannot be bought. So go out there, vote for your women, vote for your sisters, and your sisters are going to take you to that level, because we here now are your female, are your Esthers, and the female version of David who fought Goliath. We are those, and we will take you to the promised land.
Take you to the promised land, of course, the biblical.
Vote like a boss.
Vote like a boss. When does the process end, Coretta?
The process ends on the 15th of April. On the 15th of April, this process will end. And so I want to thank teachers in advance, and to take this opportunity. If you notice the way I'm dressed, I was on the quarantine today in Region 6, which of course is my hometown, my turf. I was there with my colleagues and I took them through the quarantine. And our teachers there have embraced us. And so I want to take this opportunity to wish you a happy Pago, and to ask that you use the colors to eliminate not only you, but your neighbors and your students and other teachers, so that they are going to vote like bosses, and we are going to change the GTU to the level, to the place, as a matter of fact, that the GTU once was, where we have leaders who will stand up and speak. Whether the coalition is there or not, we will stand and speak, because the issues of teachers are our issues, because we are teachers. And when we ask for better working conditions, there is nothing political in that. When we ask for proper chalk to write on those chalkboard, there is nothing political in that. When we ask for better salaries, there is nothing political about that. So don't allow people to come and cloud your vision. Vote like bosses.
And let me say, Dr. Hines, happy Pago in advance to you, my sister, Dr. Hines, and your audience. And also, I want to say this, that with the leadership that you're going to vote for, with myself, Ms. McDonald, and the others, we are the ones that will speak truth to power.
Speaking truth to power, as we've been doing here this evening, and we have a few more weeks in the process. Of course, this program is open to you all. So whenever you all are ready to come on and to make another pitch, just let Andrew know and we will slot you in. And I will ask Andrew to do a short infomercial with you guys. So even when you're not on the program, we can have your voices and your faces.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hines.
You're welcome and good luck. And I know that in the end, you shall prevail. You shall prevail. And to you, the audience, you all have been really working it up tonight, especially you women, and saying two powerful sisters. Powerful and sisters is like powerful multiplied by two, because sisters, by their very nature, are powerful. And so when you say two powerful sisters, you're talking about powerful by two. Good night to you all, and spread the word. You all got teach your family, you all got teach your girlfriend, you all got teach your daughter. Tell them where to vote, and how to vote. Until next week, happy Phagwah to all of us. To our Hindu brothers and sisters, a special happy Phagwah to you. But to the extended Guyanese family, happy Phagwah. And may the principles that underlie the Phagwah observance be observed by all of us. We can only be better. Have a nice weekend. See you all next Tuesday.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.